Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of the DK podcast. Today I'm joined by Kathryn Strachan. Is it Strachan or Strachan?
Strachan, but that was really
Strachan.
close, so that counts.
The German Strachan. Nice to meet you, Kathryn. Thank you so much for joining me. So, guys, Kathryn is a real powerhouse of digital marketing knowledge, not only on the and the fact that she's a fractional CMO for her own business, but she's built a business and sold it. She is a successful author of a book that we're going to touch on a little bit, Scaling Success, Building Brands That Break Barriers, as well as her own podcast, Marketers Unleashed, and Kathryn also has a host of awards too. I mean, Kathryn, you've got amazing awards behind your name and your recognition and that. So there's so much I want to pick your brain with, but let's start by welcoming you to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, so let's kick off quickly with the first question, which I always ask my guests to do a mini elevator pitch. If I met you in an elevator and I asked you, who are you? What do you do? How would you pitch yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am Kathryn Strachan. I am a fractional CMO advising brands on how to build their marketing strategy and really gain market traction. My book, Scaling Success, Building Brands That Break Barriers, covers a lot of those insights on like how do you actually create a marketing strategy? Who do you need on your team? What are some of the first levers you might pull? And, then what do you do once you have that traction? So it's based on my personal experience of growing and scaling my agency. So it's filled with like practical advice and then, personal anecdotes of what went right and what went wrong along the way as well. So that's coming out really soon. And then alongside that, I speak on many stages on a variety of different topics, which is really fun and exciting. Mostly looking around marketing and leadership, but yeah, sharing my expertise with the world, both on stages as keynote speakers, but then also in my podcast, Marketers Unleashed.
Wonderful. Yeah. So I think I need to ask you the questions that are burning on the hearts of my listeners. So a lot of my listeners are marketers, digital marketers, social media marketers, as well as business owners. So I wanted to first start by just chatting briefly about your the business that you sold. So a lot of agency owners, that's the dream. A lot of business owners, that's the dream, is to build a business that you can sell one day. Give me some of the pros and cons of exiting your own business. What have you learned from the whole process?
Yeah, I mean, it's not as fun as it looks.
Hmm.
I mean, I've found the process to be quite painful, a bit like going through a breakup. So, I mean, especially when you own an agency, it's your be all everything, especially at the beginning, it's like having another or a first baby. You devote absolutely everything to it. You sacrifice a lot for it. So, like when it comes time to leave, even when, it's a largely positive thing, it's still a really difficult thing to go through. I mean, I feel like I've gone through and I'm going through the whole entire grief process from like,
Hmm.
the beginning of, not really thinking or knowing that it was real to, being sad to being mad to, going through that whole process of
Oh,
it
wow.
because it's a separation, it's separating your identity from it and like kind of almost reestablishing yourself in the world. Thankfully, I have a really strong personal brand. So, my brand as Kathryn Strachan remains the same. Maybe a little like it's actually taken off massively, my personal brand coming out of the agency because I'm a little like untethered. I don't need to be cautious on like what I say. I can just say what I'm thinking rather than like having to think about how it's going to impact the business because, it's not going to impact anybody but me. And that
Yeah.
content performs really well. So, I mean, I would say that I like selling and exiting agency and a business is both super exciting. It's great. It's good for the agency. It's good for the team. It's good for the clients, but it's also a really difficult and painful process. Most agency owners stay on when they sell, obviously, and do like more of a managed earn buyout. I took a worse deal so that I could leave immediately rather than, continuing to work for the agency for a couple of years. So I took a different approach to it. Yeah, but I needed to not be there anymore.
Yeah. What would you do differently if you could do things differently?
Um, I probably should have sold it about a year ago. So I think a lot of agency owners, and I think it's quite common, like you don't ever really want to sell it when you're like on the up. And when you're having the best time of your life and when you're not burnt out and like when all these things are going right. The agency exit came, after that period. So, there was challenges and problems that made me, both personally as well as within the company that made me want to exit it then. So, I think for anybody listening, it's better to think about selling your and exiting your agency when it's like almost when you don't feel like doing so because you're having the best time of your life than for doing it when, you've really reached the end of your rope and the end of your tether. So for me,
Mm,
I probably left it a little bit too late. So I left it to the point where like I was at breaking point and I really needed to, leave immediately and I couldn't, continue to stay because I'd given absolutely everything to it and I didn't have anything left to give it. So I guess for me personally, I think this happens a lot because I've been speaking to a couple of agency owners since I didn't act on it soon enough, and I probably should have.
So selling earlier and maybe when you're more successful, not waiting until you're burning out. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I don't think that that's what happens. I think people tend to think that things are going great and then they carry on. And yeah, so do you
Yeah, but that's
regret?
exactly when you should,
That's when you should
because
sell.
when
Yeah.
things are like 100% sunshine and rainbows, which it's never 100% sunshine and
Mm,
rainbows all of the time in any
yeah,
business, but when it's the most sunshine and rainbows, you think that you're just going to always continue, going
exactly.
up, that you're always going to be, going in that direction, both personally and how you feel when you're performing at work, as well as the overall company. But it's been a really difficult 2 years within the market or in general. I don't know any agency owner that's having a good time at the moment. And yeah, a lot are saying that they wish that they had thought about this sooner. I mean, I'm lucky to have gone out like when I did, but yeah, would have definitely done it sooner.
Um, do you regret selling or are you happy you sold?
Neither. I mean, I think it's probably something that needed to happen when it happened, and it happened at the right time in that sense of the word. So no, I mean, I don't regret it, and I am in a much happier and better place, which is really good. I'm in a really, really good place personally. Um, but yeah, I mean, sometimes I miss it, like when I'm talking to friends in the agency world, and when I'm talking about yeah, agency business, but agency businesses are also totally crazy and insane. I don't know how anybody does it.
Yeah, it's the worst business model in the world. It literally
I
is the
think it's
worst business
broken.
model. It's broken.
It's a
Yeah,
broken model because it's built on people and you've got people
exactly.
on payroll and that's your biggest expense. And then you've got
Exactly.
contracts and people on the other side. But the payroll doesn't adapt quick enough to accommodate for market changes, for fluxes in demand. It doesn't accommodate that because if you're to cut permanent team members, you need to obviously give them notice. They have to work their
Yeah.
notice period, any unused holiday, etc. So your business model is not set up in a way that's flexible enough to adapt and respond to the current dynamics of the economy and the world. So, I mean, I think agencies are gonna be in trouble for a while. And I think the only way really out of that problem is by focusing more on technology. So, while I'm not, ChatGPT should replace all copywriters, certainly
Mhm.
not. But using technology allows you to scale far more efficiently and effectively. And I think it'll probably become the agency that has the best technology.
The best technology and human integration so that it's seamless and not, yeah, it doesn't, because ChatGPT tends to write in the same type of tone. Yeah. So yeah, I suppose the agency harnessing technology the most efficiently wins. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had to also pivot significantly in this time. So yeah, I think it was a good time for you to exit. So let's just touch on your personal branding because we have a lot of clients. We do personal branding for a lot of our CEOs and a lot of our clients. I do it for myself, so you share very honestly on your LinkedIn. I mean, one of your posts was about your marriage counseling that you've been
I did,
having, and
that's today.
I know.
That was today's post.
And
Yeah.
you've got such lovely feedback from everybody. It's just warm and encouraging. But and so what is the sliding scale, hyper personalized, open heart, heart on the sleeve, full vulnerability to the other side, which is all corporate, cold, just my topics, that kind of thing. So how do you navigate that?
I think it probably depends on what you feel comfortable with. So, I mean, I am very much a heart on my sleeve person.
Mm,
I'm very much an open book. You ask me a question, I'll give you, the answer, and I'll give it to you, straight and direct and how I'm actually feeling at that moment, which is both a good thing and not such a good thing sometimes. But I mean, it's very much in my nature to be personal, to share my stories. And I mean, as I've grown my personal brand, I've also like started to see myself as, if I have these stories and I have this platform, I mean, what I've got 16,000 followers, then, I should share them because by sharing them, I can help other people. So, I mean, the story that I shared today about like going to marriage counseling with my husband and like how that's helped us work through some things, like I've shared previously with friends who are going through something else, and that's really helped them. So, I then know that I can get like reach a much larger audience than going one on one if I share a story like that on my platform. And by
mm,
doing that, maybe somebody who sees me or follows me will, maybe think a little bit differently, or maybe it'll push them to go to therapy, or maybe, it will change something in their lives. I mean, the point of the post as well was not only just to like share our story, but to challenge some of the stigma around therapy that, traditionally therapy is thought of as something that you only do when things are really broken, when things are really bad, when you're in a really negative place. But that is like neglecting your garden until it's totally overrun with weeds. It's
mm,
much, much, much easier to do it regularly and weekly and to, cultivate it rather than to leave it in a state of neglect until it's so bad that you have to do something like
mm.
therapy.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I also did the post for a
agree.
greater purpose because I wanted to challenge some of those norms. And I am lucky enough to have a platform and to have a voice that people listen to. And if I have that voice and if I have that platform, then it's my responsibility to use it in a way that's going to help other people who are listening to it. So I think on that scale of, where you are corporate to personal and vulnerability, it depends entirely on your style. I mean, what I tend to say to people is think about it as the stories that you're already telling. I mean, what are
Mm,
you already talking about? What are you talking about when you're on a networking call or when you're with your colleagues? And these are stories that are going to work really well on the platform. I mean, you're already comfortable sharing it. It already aligns with like who you are, and that's why you're sharing it in like a work setting. And then, if it resonates with the audience that you're talking to, it's probably also going to resonate to the audience at large because LinkedIn is, still a professional networking platform, but your audience on LinkedIn is a larger scale representative of your network on a one-to-one and in person. So if you think about the stories that you're already actively telling and the things that you're already talking about, then these are really great nuggets or content inspiration for the larger platform. But yeah, I mean, it's in each to their own. You obviously never want to be like overly promotional. So, at best, maybe an 80-20 split where like 80% is more thought leadership and 20% is more um, promotional. And it is okay to be promotional sometimes, but you do still want to be a human. It's like going on a date and you went on a date and you only talked about yourself and like why you're so amazing. Like nobody would want to go on a second date with you. But if you talk about interesting stories and you're interested in other people, then like they're probably going to want to continue to spend time with you. So it's kind of thinking about it like that. You don't just want to go for like the hard sell and only talk about like yourself or things that only you care about, which is like what you sell, really. People generally don't really care that much.
that's true.
No, no, they really don't. That's like a you
Yeah,
thing. Like, yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I know that feature you spent months and months and months building, but yeah, nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Exactly. I think, yeah, people buy from people. They don't buy from brands. They want to know. And I love what you're saying about the story. So I think homework for every listener is to go away and identify, like, what is your story? How does the story help your audiences? And I think that's a big thing about you, Kathryn, is help. Because your book is very helpful as well. Your book, you're trying to help companies scale. Your posts are trying to help people cope with life. And so talk us through a little bit about with your book, what are your top things that you've realized are holding companies back from scaling?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the biggest thing, and a lot of companies face this, especially before they fully realize the value of it, is that they try to jump into execution without a without a strategy in place. So I started being a fractional CMO because, well, I knew that the exit was coming, but also I was doing a lot of the sales and the new business for the agency, and the agency sold content marketing. And I would get on a sales call and I'd ask, "Oh, do you have a larger marketing strategy?" And, quite often, surprisingly often, far too often, the answer was no. Now,
Mm,
you probably need
yeah.
content at some point in that marketing strategy, almost undoubtedly, but it's impossible to know where or how you need it before you have that larger strategy. So, a lot of brands will try to jump into activation, will try to jump into execution before they have a strategy in place. And it almost never works. They work with an agency, they don't like the agency because the agency hasn't delivered results, but the agency hasn't delivered results because you didn't give them that bigger marketing strategy. You hadn't done any of the groundwork or the foundational setting before you did it. So I think brands often have to learn this the hard way. They often have to fall on their face, two, three times before they're actually ready to invest in strategy. But the difference of investing in strategy compared to not having a strategy is like throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping that something sticks, where having a strategy is throwing a dart at the dartboard. You might not hit the bullseye, but you're going to get pretty close.
I like it. So strategy gets you there faster and cheaper, quicker and cheaper.
Faster, cheaper, more effectively, more
Mm,
efficiently. I mean, some of my consulting clients, like I've gone into a company that didn't have any strategy in place, but they had like a more junior marketer, and a junior marketer is always keen to impress. So they're always keen to say yes to like everything, and they'll just end up doing like all of the things. But their marketing hadn't been achieving the results that they wanted, and the marketing manager that was in place was pulled pillar to post, was totally overworked, was totally
mm,
like directionless. So, even just going in and making some small changes. So this is before even investing in like a proper budget and an investment, you're able to steer the ship in the direction that you want to go. It's a bit like, having a ship on an open water. And like if you don't have a map, you don't have a compass, you don't have any direction, like where are you going? Who knows?
mm,
But when you
mm.
have that, you can head purposely and intentionally in the direction that you want to get in. So, I mean, I think, and what I hope that my book gives people is at least an understanding of how to begin to build that strategy and how to think strategically and tactfully and intentionally. I'm a big fan of intentional marketing and not doing random acts of marketing, but being smart on what you do and when you do it and where you do it.
I love that random acts of marketing. But a lot of, I actually encountered a client with a decent marketing strategy in place. I have to say, um, there have been clients with bits of strategies. Often the brand has a strategy. There's a little bit of a brand strategy floating around, or there's a bit of a this, but I don't know what it is. But they're, either, like you said, the marketers just don't have time, or they don't understand the value of it, or nobody. But, the first thing that we do when we come on board with a company is we create the strategy together. We co-create it. And just the act of aligning everyone in a meeting and getting that, it's amazing. None of the directors agree. This one wanted this way, well, that one wanted that way. And one of the things that the workshop does is it just gets everyone to speak together, which actually often, doesn't happen. So yeah, I agree with
Yeah,
you. Strategy, strategy,
absolutely.
strategy.
I mean, I used to do the new business for the agency, and the agency only really sold content marketing. But I mean, looking back, the most successful client relationships were the ones that already had a strategy in place. And I wish, agencies are always super keen to like, I mean, it's hard when you've got sales targets to not just say yes to clients, even when clients aren't perhaps, your ideal your
Mm,
ideal customer, your ideal client persona. But, I should have said no to all the clients that came in that wanted to start with content but didn't have a marketing strategy because almost every time they ended up being the clients who were unhappy or who left or who, were the most difficult to work with because they didn't have that bigger direction. So, I mean,
mm,
not having a strategy, like a larger marketing strategy, is such a massive red flag that, agencies who do more of the execution. So, it's different if you're obviously a consultancy and you're going to help them create that larger marketing strategy, but agencies that do more of the execution really should not take on clients
mm,
that don't have a marketing strategy because you are never going to win. It's going to tear down the
mm,
team. The team are going to be upset. The client's upset. The client's undoubtedly going to leave within 6 to 12 months,
mm,
almost undoubtedly, and it's never going to be a successful project.
mm,
It's just not. So I guess in hindsight, and hindsight's a bitch, right? I
mm.
guess in hindsight, I should have said no to all the clients who wanted to start content marketing but didn't have a larger marketing strategy.
Is that one of the first things that you do as a fractional CMO?
Is that the strategy? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the strategy can be a little bit more of like it can take, 2 to 3 months to really set it, especially by the time you go through the workshops and competitor analysis and get stakeholder alignment on these things. So sometimes there are more immediate needs that like also need to happen. So sometimes you're
Mm,
balancing like short-term immediate needs with like
mm,
the long-term more strategy building. I think especially when you don't have a senior marketer in a role, it can create a bit of a backup. So you might have like urgent things like case studies that really need to get done, or with one of my clients, like we're overhauling the entire website because the website is really, really, really bad. So I mean, we
mm,
know that we need to do this, and so I'm doing the strategy and the core messaging at the same time that we're doing the big rebrand and the website needs to be live so that we can do the Series B raise, which they're going into. So with
mm,
how business timelines have worked, there's some things that need to get done before or while the larger marketing strategy is getting created. So, I mean, sometimes it's a little bit of a balancing act between immediate needs and like more of a long-term vision, and, making sure that both are kind of satisfied and hit. But yeah, I mean, we need to get the strategy in place. We need to like understand KPIs. I mean, I want to understand KPIs because how am I going to be measured in the role? How, I can tell you, oh, it's working, but I want you to feel like it's working. So what's really
mm,
going to help you to move the needle? And what KPIs are we going to be looking at and using to justify to the board that this is an investment that should continue? And
mm.
I mean, what is that investment going to be? What's the marketing budget? A strategy is just a plan on paper if you don't have a budget. So,
Yeah.
having a budget that you can use to execute it. I hate designing a strategy without knowing or having any steer, even a rough one, on like what the budget's going to be, because I could propose, the moon, but if you can only
Mm.
afford to go down the block, then I shouldn't be making a plan that takes you to the moon. So I mean, even
I
knowing,
completely agree.
how much budget,
Yeah,
even if it's rough,
I
like
know.
okay, we're kind of looking at maybe around this, is helpful to knowing where we are going and where we're aiming because
I know.
your
That's one of the,
KPIs, your budget, everything needs to be aligned.
yeah, it's the question that I think pisses off prospects probably the most. Like how,
And
it's
they
a
never want
weird
to tell you,
question. They never want to
ever.
tell you. But I always say, look, I need to know your target. If you tell me your target market, if you tell me, so who you're trying to reach, you tell me your goals and you tell me your budget. Like I can put together a plan for you based on those things, but the budget is really like, are we specking plastic seats or is it leather with a sunroof? I need to know. So yeah, I completely
Yeah.
agree
Well,
with
and I
you.
think a lot of the times they don't know.
Mm,
I think a lot of marketers don't fight hard enough for budget, especially if they're not senior enough. So I know a lot of more
mm,
like junior marketers who will just literally go get every single item signed off for it to be spent. I mean, when I act as a fractional CMO, like don't play that game.
Mm.
Give me the budget. I'll make it work
Yeah.
with
Yeah, yeah,
whatever
yeah.
that is in there. And I can advise you on how much you should spend as well. And it's definitely two-way conversation between, well, we definitely need to spend this if we want to achieve that. And it's, a two-way
Mm.
conversation. But, I'm also don't have the time to go and ask for approval on every single purchase. So I think a lot of times like prospects don't tell you the budget because not because they're being malicious, but more because they
Mm.
don't even know themselves.
Mm.
And I think,
Yeah.
that's really just bad form.
Well,
They need to fight harder for those budgets. They need to
mm.
like be really adamant that they need the budget. And I think marketers like need to say no more. No, I'm not going to go find you an agency when you haven't told me what the budget is. So like I would
Yeah.
never go out to market if I didn't know what the budget was as a fractional CMO, because what am I looking at? Am I looking at a large agency? Am I looking at a freelancer? Like what am I looking at? And I'm not
True.
going to waste my time going around and beating around all those bushes if I don't know. So what is the budget that we have to spend?
Mm.
But I quite often I find myself saying no more than I find myself saying yes with my fractional clients because everybody's got great ideas. There's millions of them and there's millions of priorities. And like my job
Mm.
is actually to weed out and focus on what we are going to focus on and what is going to get us where we want to go
Mm.
rather than like all of the other noise. So I think like I was thinking about this today, but I think that probably the number one most underrated skill in marketing is saying no.
I love
No,
that.
I'm not going to do that for you today. No, I'm not going to go find you an agency without a budget. No, I'm not going to hit those KPIs if you don't give me any budget to do it. No, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. And no, we're not going to use TikTok because we're a SaaS marketing agency or well, SaaS business and it's not our
Yeah,
audiences.
because
But
somebody in product who knows
exactly.
nothing about marketing
I
has had
know.
an idea for a blog post or
It's
social
usually
post.
it's the chairperson's daughter who said we should use Pinterest. What about Pinterest? Oh, just not right for our audiences.
No, I've gotten really good at saying no in a way that doesn't make people feel bad about it.
Oh,
Like,
that's
oh,
clever.
that's a
That's a
great
good skill.
idea, but let
I
me add
love
it.
that
Let me
idea.
consider it. Let me see if it's going to fit in the strategy. So like I've
Yeah,
gotten really
yeah.
good at saying no without it and also at including the stakeholders in the right time. Because if you include them in the right time, make them feel involved because that's normally what they want. When they're contributing ideas, they normally want to feel like they're involved and they're helping marketing because marketing's driving sales. And that's great. It's like a great
Hmm.
feeling. They want to be involved, which is great. You want them to be engaged in marketing because how you're going to get budget, how you're going to take them on this journey with you. But it's getting them involved in the right ways and directing their energy. So, I mean, not to compare them to children, but it's a little like children, you get them to burn their energy before bed so that when you go to put them to bed, they're tired and they go to bed. And it's a lot, I
That's
mean,
funny.
managing internal stakeholders is kind of a lot like that.
I agree. I think as marketers, that's a key skill. So, in closing, what would you say? What is in marketing, this whole massive skill set that we have as marketers? What's the thing you love the most to do? Like, I love information architecture, wireframing a new website. It brings me so much joy. It's creative, business, it's UX, and it brings all of my marketing skills to the fore. And I always start like there with when I have a new client, is because if we can articulate the service offering and the big value-based statement, then it like a lot of the marketing speaks from there. What is your one thing that you love doing?
I think I have two. Can I have two?
Yes.
I mean, I love like core messaging because I can see things that other people can't see in
Mm.
a totally non-crazy way. I can see things that other people can't see. So, I'll be in a session and like be able to pull out these insights and create a mission statement where like before they really struggle to articulate that. And quite
Mm.
often we'll be like, how did you do that? That's like magic. So I can work
Yes.
magic with core messaging and, seeing stories and narratives that other people can't see. I've spent my whole life, with stories and words, and wordsmithing is definitely my
Mm.
thing. But pulling out these insights and condensing these insights into core messaging, like the feedback always feels amazing because it's like I've
Mm.
worked magic. They have no idea how I've done it. Oh my God, how did you do that? I think in terms of like activation and execution, probably like my favorite thing is to host roundtable dinners. So I do these like for my clients as well as like I can be hired to just do a roundtable dinner. But I love bringing people together. I have a really strong network and I've spent most of my career networking. So I had a target for a long time of meeting 50 new people every single month. So I've
Whoa.
built a really strong network that I'm super proud of, and I love being able to engage my network in different ways, whether it's doing like an in-person roundtable or even just doing networking. So one of my clients I have a networking goal of meeting 20 new people every month for them. And I love people and finding out what other people are up to and like hearing their stories. So that really makes me quite happy to be able to do as well. So I'd say that kind of sums up me as a marketer,
Oh, that makes
storyteller,
perfect
story
sense.
finder,
Yeah.
connector.
You're a people connector. You connect the dots between all the words that people throw at you, and you're able to condense it down and boil it down very quickly into like the big value statements. Um, and I think as marketers, I always say you have to be able to bring order from the chaos. Clients come at us with a world of chaos, and we have to be structured. We have to be able to bring order from this chaos very quickly, be able to say, put things into boxes. So I also think my superpower is organizing things. And I'm a home organizer and I am an information organizer as well. And I think that is also something that really helps in this game. Kathryn, in
Yeah.
closing, what's next for you? What are you
My
focusing
book's
on from
coming
here?
out really soon. It's in the final stages of production, so I'm really excited for my book to come out. I am currently recording season 1 of my podcast as well, so I'm really excited for my podcast to come out. So I've got some interesting things in the works. I'm also speaking at a couple of big upcoming events, including one in India in January, which will take
Oh,
me to the other side of the globe. So I am looking forward to some big speaking events and publishing my book and getting my podcast live again.
that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we will include all of your contact details in the descriptions below, and people are welcome to reach out to you. Kathryn, you're amazing, and I hope to, yeah, have you
Thank
on the show
you.
again. All the
Thank you so much for
best.
having me.
Thank you.